Hello there, and welcome to today's recap of the anime series titled Mashle, Magic and Muscles. In a nutshell, it's a story set in the magic realm where 99.99% of the humans possess mysterious black marks on their faces. Such marks serve as proof of their noble magical inheritance. As for the unfortunate fellows born without a mark, those are considered as a threat to society's prosperity and therefore are eliminated mercilessly. Sadly enough, our protagonist Mash happens to be one such unfortunate fella, born without an ounce of magic power to advocate for his right to live. Even so, Mash not only manages to survive, but also goes on to thrive despite being born with such an obvious handicap. Wondering why that is? Stay around for a bit longer to uncover the truth then. In the initial scene, an old-timer named Regro Burndead is seen relaxing in his tiny hut situated deep in the forest. What's funny is how the level-headed fella's temper soon shoots through the roof after his dim-witted son Mash breaks the door after forgetting how to open it. The guy's a living legend, no doubt. Anyways, the infuriated Regro soon remembers how trying to drill any common sense into his son is a lost cause and therefore calms down to save his breath instead. On the flip side, the pitiful Mash not only turns out to be brainless, but was in fact also born markless. As stated earlier, those without a magic mark carved onto their faces are deemed as a threat to the gene pool in this magic-worshipping society. Knowing all that, Regro's been living the life of a hermit together with his son Mash for the past 15 years or so. In order to ensure his son isn't a complete good-for-nothing, Regro's been forcing Mash to train his physique for quite a few years now. Funny thing is, just one look at Mash's daily physical routine gives the nearby squirrels a run for their money. Or nuts, I suppose. Anyways, Mash later sneaks away from home and into a nearby city, despite his father's warning that afternoon. Why slip out on such an urgent notice, you ask? Well, guess what? Our idiotic protagonist risked being publicly recognized as a markless individual simply because he was dying to taste a couple of cream puffs. Either his sweet tooth's higher than mine, or his brain is utterly non-existent. I choose both. Anyways, to make matters worse, Mash catches the attention of a drunk police officer who, together with his superior named Brad, follows Mash back home to further investigate the markless boy. Upon discovering their residence, Brad finally makes his move by attempting to arrest Mash. Regro puts up a brave front here by utterly refusing to hand over his son, even if it may cost him his dear life. Here, we witness a flashback about how, just like the present-day Mash, Regro too used to be a good-for-nothing fella back in the day. Things back then worsened to a point where unaliving himself seemed like the only way out for the depressed Regro. However, call it destiny or whatever, but Gramps happened to chance upon baby Mash right before he attempted to unalive himself. Needless to say, the markless Mash had been abandoned by his parents the instant he was born. On the contrary, Regro finally discovered somebody who needed him and therefore took it upon himself to raise Mash. Back to the present, Mash's temper flips after witnessing his adoptive father being bullied by a couple strangers. What happens next forces even Regro's jaw to literally hit the floor. Simply put, instead of turning tail and making a run for the hills like Regro tells him to, Mash ends up boldly confronting the intruders for his pop's sake. That's not all though. The real fun starts once our freak of nature protagonist manages to defeat Brad simply by utilizing his physical strength to slap away all of his opponent's aggressive magic spells. The result remains the same even after Brad utilizes the spell which once drove away a dragon for him. Instead of feeling resentful, Brad's sixth sense starts screaming at him to not miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Hence, the police investigator offers Mash a deal. Either he can join the Eastern Academy and strive to become a divine visionary, or he can continue being hunted for the rest of eternity. Needless to say, Brad will benefit greatly so long as Mash truly ends up becoming a divine visionary, so basically, it's a win-win. Without any suspense, Mash accepts the former option, since it not only helps keep Regro safe, but even he himself will no doubt be spared and might be even accepted as part of the society, so long as he's able to become a divine visionary. Next, we witness Mash standing outside Eastern Academy's grounds, hoping to attempt the entrance exam. The fella is even sporting a fake mark on his face to help cover his true identity. Anyways, the exam begins pretty soon. What amazes the other contestants is how Mash manages to nail one test after another in a flawless sequence. Unbeknownst to everybody else, Mash merely keeps utilizing his otherworldly physical strength to pass the magic exams. The examiner Claude notices this and therefore starts plotting Mash's downfall after the boy starts getting on his nerves. As such, Claude bribes a female examinee named Lemon with confirmed entry into the academy, so long as she manages to slow down Mash and prevent him from finishing the final exam. Lemon does as told and, for a time, keeps hampering Mash's progress by pretending to be a troublesome crybaby. Knowing he might fail, Mash becomes fed up at last and therefore abandons the girl in hopes of quickening his pace. However, the kind-hearted fellow returns pretty soon to rescue Lemon from a giant riddle monster. This results in Mash winning Lemon's affection. Sadly enough, there's barely any time left to feel their way out of the maze and everything. Far outside, Claude is still gloating at the likelihood of Mash failing when huge collapsing noises start resounding all of a sudden. Guess what? Our impatient protagonist simply blasted apart the walls and made a beeline straight for the finishing line while in a hurry. Long story short, Mash passes the entrance exam with flying colors. Later, he becomes acquainted with his roomie Finn, who patiently explains to Mash about how to become a divine visionary. Simply put, one needs to consistently nail academic exams, various research projects, and co-curricular activities in order to earn silver and gold coins. Goes without saying, such coins are crucial on one's way up the ladder until he eventually ends up becoming a divine visionary. A couple days later, Mash ends up incurring the wrath of Lloyd, the local scumbag who continually leverages his noble background just so he can bully his fellow schoolmates. The sly fella soon forces Finn to secretly ruin Mash's various possessions like his books. Poor Finn is scared witless at first and therefore complies with Lloyd's demands without any objections. However, Finn's moralistic self soon awakens after Mash coincidentally refers to him as a good friend. As expected, Finn's refusal to comply with his dirty schemes any further doesn't sit well with Lloyd. Flash forward a bit and Mash runs into Finn while the latter is busy kneeling on the floor with a bloody nose and everything. Mash therefore slams Lloyd's head inside the concrete floor as retribution for what he did to his precious roommate. The vice principal Farman arrives just then and unreasonably slanders Mash with having attempted to exterminate a fellow schoolmate. Mash soon realizes how Farman is simply backing Lloyd because of his nobility and therefore loses any hope about justice being served. With expulsion on the horizon, Mash states how there's nothing to lose anyway and therefore ends up becoming fearless. Result, you ask? Well, suffice to say, even the vice principal isn't spared by Mash's evil clutches and ends up being buried inside the floor in a matter of minutes. Afterwards, Mash unexpectedly escapes being expelled thanks to Principal Wahlberg, who too is a pure-hearted man of justice and prefers to run the school in a by-the-book manner. That said, instead of being kicked out of school, Mash ends up securing Principal Wahlberg's full support on his journey to become a divine visionary. After the incident, Mash's popularity skyrockets, since he not only destroyed the local school bully, but also got away with having forcefully buried the crooked vice principal. As a result, a senior student named Tom comes to seduce Mash into joining the Duelo team. Basically, it's an interesting ripoff of Harry Potter's Quidditch, where two teams attempt to score against one another while flying on magic broomsticks. Later, during the final scene, Mash is seen blankly staring at the other airborne players while he himself remains standing on the ground. After all, no amount of muscle mass can help you fly and float mid-air for a prolonged duelo match. Poor Tom ended up slashing his own feet with an axe, no doubt. Meanwhile, Mash stupidly stares up at the sky while he's continuously being showered with rotten tomatoes by the infuriated audience. That's where the episode comes to an end. Please do comment in case you're rooting for recaps or even further Mashle episodes.